What if, one day, time itself decided to begin again? Not just a calendar reset, not just the fall of empires or the rewriting of history, but a true cosmic restart. Imagine everything humanity has ever built, cities, languages, technologies, and even memories erased in an instant, leaving us, once again, as scattered tribes beneath an endless sky. It sounds like the premise of science fiction, yet when we peel back the layers of archaeology and myth, we discover that whispers of this possibility echo throughout human history. Ancient texts speak of forgotten ages. Myths from every continent describe worlds destroyed and remade. And scientists, too, have asked a chilling question. Has human civilization lived, died, and reset before? Consider this. Modern humans have existed for nearly 300,000 years. But our oldest civilizations, the pyramids of Egypt, the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the stone temples of the Andes, are barely 5,000 years old. That leaves hundreds of thousands of years unaccounted for. What were we doing all that time? Did humanity simply wander in caves? Or could there have been lost civilizations, societies erased by floods, ice, fire, or even a reset of time itself? Tonight, we dive into a mystery that challenges the very foundation of history and science. We will explore archaeological puzzles, ancient legends, and thought experiments about human evolution that force us to ask, what if the timeline we know is only one version of reality? What if our ancestors lived through cycles of creation and destruction, with knowledge rising and vanishing like waves upon the shore? This is not just a story of prehistory. It is a meditation on the fragility of time and on the possibility that we too may be living in a civilization destined to vanish before beginning again. To understand the idea of civilization resetting, we must first ground ourselves in what archaeology and science already know. Human evolution, after all, is not a straight, unbroken line of progress, but a fragile web of survival, extinction, and adaptation. Let us start with time. Homo sapiens, anatomically modern humans, emerged in Africa nearly 300,000 years ago. But before us came others: Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and a host of lesser-known cousins like Homo floresiensis, the so-called hobbits of Indonesia, and Homo naledi, discovered deep inside a South African cave. These species remind us that human history is not unique. It is shared, fractured, and filled with endings. Many of these relatives thrived for hundreds of thousands of years, far longer than our own civilizations, before disappearing into extinction. Could our fate be the same? Archaeology offers haunting clues. Sites like Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, dating back over 11,000 years, appear to have been deliberately buried. This monumental site predates agriculture, cities, and written language. Its existence suggests that humans were building complex, ritualistic structures long before conventional history admits. Was Göbekli Tepe the work of a civilization on the edge of erasure, deliberately sealing its secrets before time reset the stage? Similarly, consider the end of the last ice age. Around 12,000 years ago, global temperatures surged, melting ice sheets and raising sea levels by over 100 meters. Entire coastlines vanished, and with them, any settlements that might have stood there. Today, archaeologists suspect that vast prehistoric cities could lie hidden beneath the oceans. The myth of Atlantis, the great flood stories in the Bible, Mesopotamian tablets, and Hindu epics may all preserve fragments of memories from this cataclysmic reset. And then there is the Toba catastrophe. About 74,000 years ago, the eruption of Mount Toba in Indonesia caused one of the most severe volcanic winters in history. Ash blotted out the sun, global temperatures plummeted, and the human population may have dwindled to as few as 1,000 breeding individuals. In genetic terms, humanity nearly vanished. Imagine that moment, a handful of scattered survivors carrying the future of our species, forced to restart society from the edge of extinction. Science also points to smaller, subtler resets. cultural collapses where knowledge and progress were lost. The fall of the Roman Empire plunged Europe into centuries of forgotten engineering and decayed literacy. The mysterious disappearance of the Maya left behind vast stone cities swallowed by jungle. Each collapse reminds us that civilizations are not guaranteed to persist. They are fragile, temporary arrangements in the face of time. But what of the reset of time itself? Physics and cosmology propose scenarios where time is not linear, but cyclical. Universes collapsing and rebirthing in endless loops. Hindu cosmology speaks of yugas, vast ages of creation and destruction repeating over cosmic time. Could it be that human civilization is too caught in a smaller version of this cycle? That we live, rise, fall, and then return to the beginning, never realizing the story has been told before? Archaeological puzzles deepen this mystery. Ancient maps, like the Piri-Reis map of 1513, appear to show coastlines of Antarctica long before its official discovery. Megaliths like those of Baalbek in Lebanon weigh hundreds of tons, so massive that even modern cranes struggle to move them. How are they built? Were these feats truly the work of early civilizations, or echoes of an earlier cycle of human knowledge that was later forgotten? The scientific community, of course, is cautious. Mainstream archaeology demands hard evidence, datable artifacts, bones, and stratigraphy. And yet absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. With 70% of Earth covered by oceans, with dense jungles concealing ruins, and with deserts burying ancient cities, perhaps we have only scratched the surface of humanity's true history. Ultimately, the historical and scientific context leaves us with two undeniable truths. First, humanity has faced extinction and collapse before, whether through volcanic winter, ice, or empire. Second, myths and mysteries suggest that what we call history may not be the whole story. Perhaps time has already reset civilization, and we are only the latest version in a cycle stretching back further than we can imagine. So what if it were to happen again? What if civilization, as we know it, were suddenly forced back to zero? Would we rise again as we once did, or would we vanish like the Neanderthals, leaving behind only bones and broken monuments? That is where our journey now takes us, into the core of the mystery, where evidence, imagination, and speculation blur together into a haunting vision of humanity's place in time.
Imagine a world where every skyscraper, every satellite, every glowing screen, and every library of human knowledge is gone. The cities we call immortal, New York, Tokyo, Paris, become little more than crumbling ruins, overrun by plants, their steel skeletons rusting into the soil. Within a few thousand years, even these ruins would be nearly indistinguishable from the Earth itself. Nature would reclaim everything, and the story of our age might be forgotten. This is not fantasy. Archaeologists have already seen it happen. The Mayan cities of Central America, once filled with tens of thousands of people, were lost under dense jungle for centuries until rediscovered. Angkor Wat, in Cambodia, was swallowed by forest when its civilization collapsed. Even Rome, the eternal city, fell into disrepair, its aqueducts broken, its population scattered, its knowledge forgotten. If not for later preservation, Rome might have vanished entirely. Now picture humanity facing a reset far greater than any collapse of empire, a true return to zero. Let's use a thought experiment. Suppose a cosmic event, a solar flare, a comet strike, or even a massive volcanic eruption wiped out not our species, but our systems, technology, cities, energy grids, and food networks. Overnight, billions would be thrust back into survival mode, stripped of the tools we rely upon. What would happen? Anthropologists suggest we would look a lot like our prehistoric ancestors. Small, scattered tribes would form, competing for resources. Knowledge of farming might survive in fragments, but without machines, fertilizer, or irrigation networks, it would be difficult to sustain large populations. Within a few generations, oral traditions would replace digital archives. Language itself might fragment, as it once did when early humans spread across the globe. And yet, humans are remarkably adaptable. Look back to the Ice Age. For tens of thousands of years, our ancestors lived on the brink of extinction, facing mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and freezing climates. They crafted tools from stone, bone, and wood. They painted cave walls with images of their fears and their gods. They learned to cooperate, to share, to dream. This resilience is our greatest inheritance. If time reset civilization, survival skills, hunting, foraging, storytelling, spiritual belief would resurface quickly. But here lies a deeper mystery. What about memory? What about the knowledge of what came before? History shows that knowledge is both fragile and persistent. In ancient Mesopotamia, clay tablets preserved myths and mathematics for thousands of years. In Egypt, hieroglyphics etched into stone still speak after millennia. But in contrast, most of our modern records are digital, dependent on fragile storage that could vanish in decades without electricity. If time reset tomorrow, perhaps only a handful of stone monuments, the pyramids, Stonehenge, and Easter Island statues, would endure long enough to whisper to future humans, "We were here before you." This cyclical vision of civilization is not new. Hindu philosophy speaks of the yugas, ages of humanity that rise and fall in repeating cycles, each ending in destruction before rebirth. Plato wrote of Atlantis, a great civilization destroyed in a single day and night by floods and fire, leaving only legends behind. Even the Bible describes the Great Flood as a divine reset. Across cultures, myths seem to remember that what exists today is not the first version of humanity. Now, picture this through the eyes of prehistoric humans. A tribe gathers around a fire, their elders telling stories of a golden age when people spoke to the stars, when knowledge was vast, when cities gleamed. Are these myths, or are they distorted memories of a cycle humanity once endured? Let's take a concrete example, Göbekli Tepe. Built around 9600 BCE, this site features massive stone pillars arranged in circles, covered with carvings of animals and abstract symbols. It predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years. But here's the mystery. Why would hunter-gatherers, supposedly living in small, simple bands, construct something so monumental? Archaeologists suggest it was a temple, a place of ritual. But others wonder, was Göbekli Tepe a remnant of knowledge carried over from a previous age, a civilization that had already risen and fallen? If time reset, human ingenuity ensures we climb again. Fire would be rediscovered, stone tools would return, eventually agriculture would take root, cities would emerge, and with them writing, religion, and art. But the pace of this rebirth is uncertain. Would it take us another 10,000 years to reach our current level? Or would fragments of preserved knowledge, myths, monuments, carved maps, help us ascend faster, as if guided by faint echoes of our forgotten ancestors? The first core idea, then, is simple, yet profound. Civilization is not guaranteed to march forward endlessly. It can collapse, vanish, and reset, and each time, humanity must climb from the ashes. Prehistoric humans remind us that survival is possible, but they also warn us the story of civilization is fragile, and it may have been told many times before.
If the first part of our journey revealed that civilization can collapse and reset, the second part forces us to confront an unsettling possibility. Maybe this cycle has already happened many times before. Perhaps our current civilization is not unique, but simply the latest chapter in a book we never knew was being rewritten. Archaeology often leaves us with puzzles, enigmatic discoveries that don't quite fit into the timeline we've constructed. Consider the so-called out-of-place artifacts. In India, ancient texts like the Mahabharata describe celestial weapons and flying machines, vimanas, that sound eerily advanced. In South America, massive geoglyphs like the Nazca lines stretch across desert plains, visible only from the sky. Were these mere rituals or echoes of a lost technological understanding? Mainstream scholars caution us not to leap to fantastical conclusions. The human mind is prone to pattern seeking, and myths are not blueprints for technology. And yet, history reminds us that myths often preserve kernels of truth. For centuries, the city of Troy was thought to be pure legend, until Heinrich Schliemann unearthed its ruins in the 19th century. Could our flood myths, our Golden Age stories and our tales of gods walking among men be distorted memories of earlier resets in human evolution? This is where scientific debates sharpen. Some archaeologists argue that humans lived as simple foragers for most of our existence, only advancing after the Ice Age ended. Agriculture, they say, could not have developed earlier because of harsh climates. Yet others point to anomalies, traces of ancient irrigation systems in unexpected places, cave art that suggests astronomical knowledge, and even human footprints fossilized in layers of rock thought to predate Homo sapiens. Each fragment adds to the debate. Was human progress linear, or were there interruptions, resets, and forgotten ages of sophistication? Let us imagine two opposing perspectives. Perspective A, the mainstream view. Civilization is young. It began around 10,000 years ago with agriculture in the Fertile Crescent. From there, humans developed writing, cities, and technology. Any claims of earlier civilizations are simply misinterpretations or exaggerations. Perspective B, the alternative hypothesis. Human civilization is older, cyclical, and punctuated by resets. Advanced societies may have existed before the Ice Age, their ruins now buried under oceans or destroyed by catastrophe. Myths and monumental architecture are the faint whispers of these forgotten worlds. Neither perspective is easy to dismiss. On one hand, we lack undeniable physical evidence of ancient high technology. On the other, the sheer consistency of global flood myths, the sudden appearance of complex architecture, and unexplained archaeological sites leave lingering questions. Consider the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. Some scientists propose that around 12,800 years ago, a comet or asteroid struck Earth, triggering wildfires, sudden cooling, and widespread extinctions, including the disappearance of mammoths and giant sloths. If true, this event may also have destroyed early human cultures. Could this be the true origin of the flood myths and the mysterious gap between prehistoric humans and recorded history? Even within our own species, memory seems fragile. Neanderthals, once considered brutish cavemen, are now known to have buried their dead, created art, and possibly had language. Yet they vanished. If Homo sapiens had disappeared alongside them, would another branch of humanity, Denisovans or some other unknown relative, have risen in our place? Would they tell stories of us as myths, the way we tell stories of giants and gods? The unanswered questions multiply. Why do so many ancient monuments align with stars and solstices, as though their builders carried a deep cosmic knowledge? Why do isolated cultures on different continents share similar myths of great floods, sky beings, or golden ages? Why do some structures, like the Baalbek stones, appear beyond the capabilities of their supposed era? The truth may be more complex than either perspective allows. Perhaps humanity's story is both linear and cyclical, bursts of progress interrupted by catastrophe, like a flame that flares brightly before being smothered, only to be lit again. Each reset wipes the slate clean, yet fragments survive, monuments, myths, half-remembered symbols that whisper to the future. And here we stand, in the present, surrounded by technology that seems eternal, but history warns us nothing lasts forever. Rome thought itself eternal. The Maya thought their cities invincible. Even the mighty mammoth seemed permanent, until they too were gone. The second core idea then is this. Humanity's story may not be a straight line, but a spiral. We rise, we fall, we rise again, each time forgetting more than we remember. And in those gaps, in the shadows between resets, lie the greatest mysteries of archaeology, waiting for us to uncover.
Up to this point, we've explored the possibility that human civilization is not a straight path of progress, but a fragile cycle of rise, collapse, and renewal. But what does this mean for us today? Why should myths of lost civilizations, the extinction of Neanderthals, or the collapse of ancient empires matter to people living in the 21st century? The answer lies in perspective. Prehistoric humans survived the Ice Age, volcanic winters, and mass extinctions. They endured environments harsher than most of us can imagine, armed only with stone tools, fire, and community.
Their resilience is a reminder that survival does not come from technology alone, but from adaptability, cooperation, and the human spirit. If time reset civilization tomorrow, if every network failed, if every city collapsed, what knowledge would truly matter? Would it be the equations stored in servers or the ability to find water, grow food, build shelter, and live in harmony with the natural world? Archaeology shows us that survival has always depended on a balance between ingenuity and humility. Those who could not adapt disappeared. Those who learned to listen to the earth endured. But reflection is not only about survival. It is also about memory. Imagine if our digital world were to vanish overnight. Billions of photos, books, and records would disappear, leaving little trace of who we were. Compare that to the carved stones of Göbekli Tepe or the painted walls of Lascaux, which have endured for over 10,000 years. Which speaks more powerfully across time, the fragile data of our computers or the timeless symbols etched in rock? There is a lesson here. What we choose to leave behind defines how we are remembered. Ancient humans left monuments aligned with stars, myths encoded in ritual, and art that reveals the depth of their imagination. What are we leaving behind for the future? Plastic waste? Decaying concrete? Satellites orbiting silently in space? Or will we leave messages that inspire, symbols that last, and knowledge that survives the reset of time? Philosophically, the idea of a reset forces us to confront humility. Civilization often imagines itself at the pinnacle of progress. We believe that history has been leading toward us, toward skyscrapers, artificial intelligence, and space exploration. But archaeology whispers otherwise. It tells us that greatness has risen and fallen before. Civilizations once thought immortal vanished into dust, their pride buried beneath sand and forest. If it happened to them, it can happen to us. This reflection should not fill us with despair, it should fill us with urgency. Urgency to preserve knowledge, to protect the planet, to strengthen our resilience. Because resets do not always come from comets or volcanoes. Sometimes they come from within. Greed, war, overconsumption, and the fragile arrogance of believing we are untouchable. So perhaps the most practical lesson comes from the Neanderthals. They were intelligent, social, and resourceful. Yet they disappeared, leaving only fragments of their DNA within us. Their story reminds us that survival is not guaranteed. If time resets, it is not the strongest who endure, it is those who adapt. So let us ask, how would we act differently if we knew civilization could reset tomorrow? Would we value wisdom over wealth? Would we prioritize cooperation over conflict? Would we teach our children not just how to code, but how to grow food, how to heal, how to dream? And perhaps more profoundly, would we live more carefully, more meaningfully, knowing that what we leave behind might one day be the only whisper of our existence to a future world? So the practical application of this exploration, then, is twofold. First, to recognize that resilience, both physical and cultural, is the foundation of survival. And second, to remember that every civilization, no matter how mighty, is temporary. We must prepare not only for progress, but for collapse. Not only for growth, but for cycles. Because in the end, if time resets, humanity may once again gather around fires, tell stories of golden ages, and carve symbols into stone, hoping that someday, someone will find them and remember.
So where does this journey leave us? We began with a haunting question. What if time itself reset human civilization? Along the way, we uncovered evidence of past collapses, from the volcanic winter of Toba to the great floods at the end of the Ice Age. We explored the possibility that myths of Atlantis, cosmic ages, and golden epochs are not mere stories, but fractured memories of civilizations erased by catastrophe. And we reflected on what these resets mean for us, today, in our fragile modern world. The lesson is clear. Civilization is not immortal. Archaeology reveals that empires rise and fall, species thrive and vanish, and knowledge is as easily lost as it is gained. The Neanderthals vanished, despite their intelligence. The Maya left behind cities reclaimed by jungle. Even mighty Rome crumbled. If time has reset before, it can reset again.
But there is also hope woven into this pattern. Every collapse has been followed by rebirth. Prehistoric humans survived on the edge of extinction, and from their endurance came the foundation of all we are today. Perhaps the true story of humanity is not progress or decline, but resilience, the ability to rise from ashes and begin again. Yet this reflection also challenges us. If we knew civilization could vanish tomorrow, what would we leave behind? Would future humans find only ruins, or would they uncover symbols, wisdom, and stories that inspire them to continue the journey? The pyramids, Göbekli Tepe, Stonehenge, and countless cave paintings prove that what we carve into stone endures far longer than what we type into screens. And so we are left with a question, one that archaeology cannot answer, but you must. If time resets, what traces of us should endure? Should it be our monuments, our myths, our science, or our compassion? The mystery of human evolution, prehistoric humans, lost civilizations, and the cycles of time is not only about the past, it is also about the future. We may be living in the middle of one cycle, blind to its ending, or at the beginning of another. Either way, the story of humanity is still being written. So as we close, I ask you, do we truly know everything about our ancestors? Or are we merely standing on the edge of forgotten worlds, their whispers still echoing beneath our feet? If you believe these mysteries are worth uncovering, then join us. Like, subscribe, and share this journey, because the story of humanity is far from over, and together we will keep searching for the truths that time itself has tried to erase.